What's up, guys? Today in the shop we have a 2014. This is a F150, and we're going to do the back brakes and the rotors. Let's get into it. You can see this is the F150. This is 2014. Looking at the wheel, you're going to have this center cap. There's going to be a little notch in there. You can see it. Just take a screwdriver, stick it in there, and we'll pry that off of there just like that. There's our lug nuts. 21 millimeter socket, take that off. My rotor is shot. So I am going to remove this whole cradle and get this so we can pull this rotor off of here. Now to do that, we're going to come around here again, and you're actually going to see the bigger bolt right here. That's below this one. We got to take off that one, and then there's going to be another one. If we come around to the bottom here, on this side, there's your other bolt right there. They are going to be 18 millimeter, and it's probably a good rule of thumb. This is going to save you a lot of headache, is soak that whole caliper in some PB Blaster and walk away for about 15 or 20 minutes. They'll actually break loose a lot easier. Just all the amount of brake dust and rust and just corrosion in general that gets back here, because it is the wheel. These bolts tend to be very, very tight sometimes, so the ordinary ratchet drive doesn't necessarily work unless you put like a leverage bar or something on it to give you some extra pull. It's kind of hard up here to get your impact gun in. The bottom one you can get an impact gun on, but soak them, walk away, and they're going to come off a lot easier. You can see on this bottom one, you're actually able to get your impact up in here and take that bottom one right out of there. The top one's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to use a ratchet on that one. All right, got both of those bolts out. Another reason you want to soak this is sometimes this whole assembly will be frozen on the rotor and make it very hard to get off, and you get a pry bar under here and you're prying up. But I typically soak everything and walk away and come back and do it. But we have both those bolts out now, and you can see this is loose. Now, the thing you want to be careful of here, this has a little bit of weight to it. You don't want this to drop down because you got this brake line here. And you don't want that to drop and overextend this brake line or break it. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to flip it and we're going to set it right up here on the leaf spring. And then we're going to get some type of bungee cord or zip tie or something just to fasten it there so it doesn't fall down on us. Nice and careful, like that. And we're going to go ahead. Oh, wow, look at them pads. Yike. I was Fred Flintstone in it there, stopping with my feet. All right, you can see this brake line. We don't have any pressure on there. We're going to let that sit there. Actually, that might be all right there. I don't think I need a bungee or anything. I think we're going to be safe there. Now you should be able to wiggle this rotor off. If it's really tight, you can spray some PB Blaster around here, around the center. It's typically where all the corrosion gets. It holds this on. Or you can spray inside of these studs here, all around here. Let it sit and walk away. You want to be careful when you're banging on this. You could get a rubber mallet and tap on the back, or just tap on the sides here of the rotor. Tap around, try to break up some of that corrosion or whatever. But you do have pads under here, which is your emergency brake. So you want to be careful when you're banging around on this. But just shimmy it off, nice and slow. When you get it far enough, you can put your hands behind it and slide it off just like that. And you can see your parking brake here, your pads here. And we're going to do a whole separate video on that. This is actually not getting done. We're just doing the rear pads and the rotor. So when we do this job, we'll do a whole separate video on that. But right now we're going to get the new rotor and we are going to slide it back on. There's our new rotor, and the part number from Napa is right there. I'm going to take the rotor. Be careful not to disrupt those pads back there. Line it up. And same way, just kind of shimmy it back and forth over top of those pads. Don't put your fingers behind here, the rotor and the dust shield here. You have to do this from the front. There we go. Now, when you go to put your rotor on, If the rotor gets stuck and won't slide all the way on, it's because it's hitting these pads. What you need to do, get yourself, it's a little brake tool wrench here. Can be done with a screwdriver, but it usually helps when you have something with a curve on it. Come down to the bottom. You're going to look in between these pads here. All right? And you see, let me get my finger up there. You see that little gold gear right there? That gear, if you get your brake tool up in there, see how it's bent and you're able to fit there. You can actually see how that gear turns? You can turn that gear. What that gear does, depending on the way you turn it, these pads will go out or they'll go in. You want them to go in so that your rotor can slide over them. Because what happens is when you took that old rotor off, these pads were probably extended out, or you have your emergency brake on. Turn the emergency brake off, because when you put the emergency brake on, these actually extend out and push against the rotor on the inside. So you may have to adjust that little gold gear down there and pull these pads in, and then your rotor should slide right on. Now that the rotor's on, we can move up here to our caliper. So we don't want to disconnect this brake line, because if we do, then we're going to have to bleed the brakes and get into a whole nother mess. We don't want to do that. We're just changing the pads. So we're going to need to lower this caliper down here to work on it. I'm going to grab a bucket, so this way we can set it down here on the bucket and I can actually see down into the caliper to work on the pads. Now that I have a comfortable working area here, we're going to remove this bolt here, and there's going to be another one right on the back side. You can see the rubber bushings there. That's how you know you're taking them off. That's actually going to remove this cradle from the caliper, and it's going to allow us to get our pads out of there. So we're going to take those two off. And that's going to be a 13 millimeter. I'm going to use my gun. So we got these bolts out. You can just pull them out of there now. And now you can see this whole assembly is loose. And we're just going to pull straight up on that. All right, I'm going to flip this upside down now. Put it up here in my vise so I can work on it. Now to get these pads out, you can just push up on this clip and kind of pull a little bit. And slide your pad right out of that groove there. Just like that. And we'll do the same thing to the other side. We're going to push it out that way. See if I can do this with one hand. So I want to push up on this clip a little bit and push the pad to the side. There we go. That's our pad on the back. All right, now we got these metal clips here. You are going to get new ones of these clips in your package. And they look just like this. Stick a screwdriver right in the side here. There it goes. Start prying up. And it pulls off, just like that. Take yourself a wire brush. We want to clean all this rust and everything off of here. I scrape my surface with the brush. I'm just going to take a little smudge of grease here. And I'm just going to put just a little coat on there. I'll take my new bracket. And I might need both hands for this. Alright, yeah, it's back on. You're just going to need two hands. And it is tight, but you will be able to get that to push on. Alright, I got my other side on. And I think we're ready to slide our pads in there. These are Napa Fleet pads. There's your part number. Always a good idea to look at your other pads and your new pads and make sure they all line up. And these look good. And one thing I'm going to do is I want to get a little bit of grease just on this rail here of these clips. Anywhere that metal meets metal, I like to put grease. You might get, some mechanics say, oh, you don't need to do that. But you know what? I'm going to do it. I always go on the side of caution, and it prevents some squeaks and stuff, and it's also going to help us slide those pads in a little bit easier. Let's see if we can do this with one hand here. I'm going to push up on this clip right here and just get it started on that track. little hard with one hand. All right, there we go. Got it started. And we're going to do the backside now. I'm going to lift up on these tabs, slide it in there, lift up on this tab, slide it in there. Yeah, that's much easier with two hands. All right. And that's what it looks like. Now, when we go to lower this back down on here, you can see that that piston right there is in the way. And we won't be able to put that on there with this piston being out. We got to get a brake pad. We're going to take an old brake pad, put it here, and we're going to get a C-clamp, and we're going to push that piston in. Before we do that, we're going to go loosen the master cylinder cap. So just come under the hood. Here's your brake reservoir here. You don't have to take the cap all the way off. Just crack it loose. That's all. Alright, so I got my old pad in here, in front of the piston here, because you don't really want to mess this up. And just going to take the old pad and set it in front of there. And you can see I have my C-clamp going around here. So we're going to crank this in, and what that's going to do is that pad is going to push that all the way in, and that'll give us the room we need to drop our new pads down in there. Alright, so we crank this in, and you'll see that start going in. Alright, it's all the way in. Now we can back this off, pull our pad out, take our C-clamp out of there, take our frame here, and there we go. Set it down inside of there. Remember, you're going to line up these holes here and back here. Don't forget to you're going to put those two bolts back in now. Get our first screw started here. Now you can see the gap we have here. Okay, that gap, and that's another reason why we pushed that in. This gap here has to be wide enough to slide over top of this rotor. If we didn't push that piston in, that pad would have been all the way out here. You wouldn't have had much of a gap, and that wouldn't have slid over the rotor. Alright, so we're all set. I went ahead and put the ratchet drive on my two bolts here and tighten them down. Now we're just going to take this and we're going to flip it up and slide it over the rotor. Just like that. Now you're going to take your top bolt member and your bottom bolt, the ones you took out, and probably gonna need my other hand, but you're gonna have to jiggle this caliper around to get this bolt to thread straight in, but you'll feel it line up and then just screw it in by hand. Top bolt's in. Now we do our bottom bolt. All right, they're both in by hand. Now we'll go ahead and we'll put the ratchet on there and tighten them in. And there you have it. You're going to do the same exact thing to the other side. And once you have them done, what you want to do is go into the truck and you want to pump the pedal really slow just so you can compress that piston and get those pads to rest against that rotor. And then put your rims back on, take it for a test drive, preferably just up and back and forth in your driveway, your parking lot. You don't want to go 80 down the highway just yet. But make sure that they feel good, and hopefully there's no issues. And that's how you put the pads in the rotors on a 2014 F-150. Please, guys, hit subscribe below. Give me a thumbs up. I'll see you next time.